Okay, as long as it's visible. Okay, are we ready to start? Okay, and today is today is May 11th, 2019. And we'll start with the homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, good morning, everybody. Okay, so we're continuing now with the reading of, this is Anguttara Nikaya, the Book of Three, Sutta number 70, the Uposatha Sutta. And this is a discourse given by the Buddha to his female lay disciple named Visakha about the proper way to observe the Uposatha. This is called the Arya Uposatha, the Uposatha as observed by the noble ones. And as I explained last time, the Uposatha is the, you might call it the religious observance day in the Indian tradition, which it's governed by the phases of the moon. And so the main Uposatha observances are on the full, especially the full moon day and the new moon, the dark moon day. And in treating the noble ones Uposatha, I changed the sequence, taking the precepts first. So we explained the precepts last week. So normally a lay disciple observes 5 precepts: to abstain from killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, false speech, and the use of intoxicants. On the Uposatha observance, of course, people can observe just the 5 precepts, but the common tradition amongst the more devoted lay followers is to take the 8 precepts. So killing, stealing, the same. Then the 3rd precept is changed to observing brahmacharya, that is complete abstinence from sexual activity. Then the abstaining from false speech, abstaining from the use of intoxicants, the same as the 5 precepts. But then we have 3 additional precepts. That is the precept to abstain from taking food after midday. Liquids, of course, are allowed, most liquids, though milk is considered a food. But in current way of practice, almond milk, soy milk are considered permissible. And even, at least in the Thai tradition, maybe some Sri Lankan monasteries, even cheese is considered allowable, because according to the monastic regulations, the Buddha has allowed certain substances which are considered medicinal, and that includes butter, ghee, butter, ghee, sugar, honey, and oil. And when cheese came to the East, they had to find a word for it, and so conveniently they ascribed the word, in the Buddhist circles, they ascribed the word for butter to cheese. And so cheese is considered a mode of butter. And since butter is allowable, cheese is considered allowable. And also dark chocolate, which is really, it's a combination of the fat of cocoa fat and sugar. And so since fat is a kind of oil and sugar is one of the allowables, so you combine them and you have dark chocolate, which is allowable, but you mix a little milk in to get milk chocolate, and it's taboo. So I've been at monasteries where you might think, oh, if I'm going to be not eating after midday, I'll be starving. I've been at monasteries where you could have a virtual feast in the evening. Varieties of cheeses, slabs of dark chocolate. Okay, so I got off on a sidetrack. Okay, so one abstains from eating after midday, then the next precept actually combines two of the novices' precepts, to abstain from singing, dancing, instrumental music, and unsuitable shows, and the use of jewelry and ornamentation and cosmetics combined into one. And then the eighth is to abstain from the use of high and luxurious bed, but instead one will sleep on a low bed or a mat on the ground. Okay, so in observing the Uposatha, one undertakes these precepts as a foundation for engaging the rest of the day in meditation practice. And so here, in the earliest section of the sutta, the Buddha explains the meditation practices that are undertaken on the Uposatha. And these are ways of purifying the mind. So observing the 8 precepts is a way of sila visuddhi, a way of purifying one's conduct. And the meditation practices are a form of citta visuddhi, a way of purifying, or ways of purifying the mind. And here we'll see what the Buddha recommends are 6 practices which are collectively called the 6 anusatis. Wow. Okay. Okay, so these are called the 6 anusatis. And the word anusati comes from, the stem of it is the word sati, which is what we know as mindfulness. And then it has a prefix, anu, which gives the suggestion, the nuance of repeated or close up. And so anusati is a repeated mindfulness or a close mindfulness. And for phonetic reasons, the S is doubled, so it becomes anusati. So we usually translate this as recollection. And so if you come across the translation recollection, and maybe you came to a meditation session, you're thinking, I want to practice mindfulness, but instead they are teaching me the anusatis. But the anusati is a kind of mindfulness. It's repeated mindfulness or close mindfulness directed towards certain themes. And so here we come across 6 themes that the Buddha is going to recommend. Okay, so first he makes the statement that the defiled mind is cleansed by exertion. So by an effort, one has to make some effort to purify the mind. Okay, and so he begins with the recollection of the Buddha. So amongst the 6 recollections, the recollection of the Buddha is probably the most popular of the practices. And this is calling to mind, repeatedly calling to mind the qualities of the Buddha. We've had sessions in the past, all-day sessions, devoted to the recollection of the Buddha. And so the traditional formula has 9 epithets of the Buddha, which highlight different aspects of the accomplishments, the achievements of the Buddha. And so even though we've gone through this several times in the past, we could go through them again. Yeah. Two. It's up here. Okay. Let's see. Is this better? I could go even to 250. I could expand. But this is 280, I think. Okay, so first, the Buddha is called, this is the first quality, the Arahat. So the word Arahat, it comes from the verb arahati, which means to be worthy, to be deserving. And so the sense here is an Arahat is one who is worthy or deserves the offerings and veneration of people. And the word Arahat was not the word originally coined by the Buddha, but it was a word that was sort of common to a number of the religious sects, the schools of thought that were current during the Buddha's day, even going back before the time of the Buddha. And so the sort of question was, who is an Arahat in the world? And so the Jains, actually the Jains, even today, they have their verse of homage is Namo, let's see, I think it's Namo Jinanang, Namo Siddhanang, Namo Arahatanang. So homage to the conquerors, homage to the accomplished ones, homage to the Arahats. So it's an ideal in Jainism and in other schools of thought. So what makes one, according to the Buddha, what makes one a worthy one, a holy one in Arahat? Eradication of the defilements that hold one in bondage to the cycle of birth and death. So an Arahat is one who has completely purified the mind right down to the root level, purified the mind of all the kilesas, the defilements, and thereby, by eliminating the defilements, breaking free from the cycle of repeated birth and death. So the Arahat is one who's completely purified and one who is liberated from repeated birth and death. And so the Buddha is not unique in being an Arahat. his disciples who have followed the path to the end also become arahats. But the next quality is what distinguishes the Buddha. That is sama sambuddho. So he's one who is sama means completely, fully, perfectly. Sambuddho, enlightened, awakened. And so the way it's understood, this expression is understood in the tradition, well, like the commentaries identify this with the sabanyuta jnana, the omniscient knowledge of the Buddha. But in the oldest texts, we don't find the Buddha making claims to omniscience in the sense of knowing everything, knowing every fact. Like how many people would be in this class on May 11, 2019, Bhante Buddha, looking ahead 2,500 years, how many students will be in Bhikkhu Bodhi's class on May 11th, 2019? Nobody will ask that, and I don't think the Buddha would even turn his attention to that. So the way I would understand the omniscience of the Buddha, that the Buddha understands the nature of all dhammas. Not that he understands and knows every matter of fact, but he understands, he can see all of the dhammas that constitute the nature of existence. And he knows their specific characteristics and their universal characteristics. And yet one never sees in the suttas somebody comes to the Buddha and asks the Buddha a question, and the Buddha says, I just don't know that answer. He never says that. There are questions that are asked to the Buddha that he puts aside, but he puts them aside not because he doesn't know the answer, but because he says that just that this is irrelevant to the task of practicing the path. So what I would say is that the Buddha is perfectly enlightened and that he knows everything that should be known to gain the goal, and he knows everything that should be, all of the obstacles that should be abandoned and eliminated, and all the practices that should be undertaken. And this is something that's unique to the Buddha. Even Sariputta, the wisest of the savakas, the disciples, sometimes makes mistakes in teaching, not about the principle of the Dhamma, but he doesn't give the exact right teaching or the exact appropriate teaching for the person being instructed. But the Buddha never misses the mark when giving a teaching. Okay, then it said that the Buddha is Vijacharana Sampanno. So here we have two things which are joined together. Vija, it's translated true knowledge, but actually there's no knowledge which is not true, so maybe we say clear knowledge maybe is better. And charana is conduct. And then the Buddha is sampanno, which means he's accomplished in these two things. So this shows like two aspects of the Buddha's achievement. One is with regard to the aspect of knowledge, what is to be known, that he knows, and the other is concerned with practice or conduct. So let's say his conduct is impeccable in regard to the sila, the principles of morality, impeccable in regard to restraint of the senses, moderation in eating, his deportment, in regard to the way he instructs others. You find a very detailed account of the Buddha's excellence of conduct in Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta number 91. It's called the Brahmayu Sutta. in that sutta, there's an elderly Brahmin who's, I think, 100 years old, 120 years old, who hears reports about the ascetic Gautama, who's said to be a Buddha, and he wants to find out whether the ascetic Gautama is truly a Buddha, but the Buddha is living far away, and he's too old to travel there himself, so he sends his young disciple to investigate the Buddha. And so this young disciple trails behind the Buddha for a number of months, observing every aspect of his behavior, and then he comes back and reports it to his master, the elderly Brahmin. And so in that report, he explains like every aspect of the Buddha's behavior. How he takes his meals, how he washes the bowl, how he walks, how he sits, how he teaches. Okay, so this is accomplished in true knowledge and conduct. Then comes the next quality, is called sugato. Sugato means literally well gone. But the way it's used in the text and other contexts, sugato is used to mean those who are fortunate, as opposed to those who are dugata, who are unfortunate, who are miserable. And so we could say that the Buddha is a fortunate one in that, the way it's explained, that he's reached the best goal by following the best path. And so in that way, he is well gone by the good path to the good destination. Okay, then the Buddha is said to be knower of the world. And so, again, this is emphasizing from still another angle the knowledge aspect of the Buddha's achievement. So here the Buddha, the commentaries explain different senses of the word world. So maybe the two that are most interesting are that he knows the world in the sense that he knows all of the constituents of the world. That is, this is called the sankhara loka, the world of conditioned phenomena. So he knows the world in terms of the 5 aggregates, the 12 sense bases, the 18 elements. So in that way, he knows the world. And also he knows the world in that he knows the different realms of existence, from the lowest hells, all the ways through the human realm, the animal realm, up to the heavenly realms, and above the heavenly realms, the Brahma world, the formless realms. All of these different realms of existence come into range of the Buddha's faculty of knowledge. And then the Buddha knows not only the planes of existence themselves, but he also knows the world in the sense of knowing the hearts and minds of the living beings in these all the different realms of existence. So he has this very extensive, detailed, intricate knowledge of, I was going to say human nature, but let's say the nature of sentient beings. Not only human beings, but all of the different beings. He knows their dark qualities, their bright qualities, their defects, their strengths, their underlying mental tendencies, their accumulations of merit and demerit. So he knows the world in that sense. And knowing the world in the sense of knowing the hearts and minds of sentient beings, that prepares the Buddha for the next quality, which is being the unsurpassed trainer of persons to be tamed. So the Buddha is able to tame and to train even sometimes the most difficult, the most obstinate, the most obtuse sentient beings amongst the human beings. He would meet proud Brahmins and through his skill and teaching be able to humble them and make them compliant and open to his teaching. He will encounter stingy, miserly people and teach them in a way that will awaken the seeds of generosity in their hearts. He'll meet violent people and be able to tame them and make them very peaceful and compassionate, like especially the case of meeting Angulimala, the serial killer. So he could tame Angulimala and even turn Angulimala into an arahat. When he meets the wise, intelligent people, he can win them over with the exposition of the Dhamma. So whatever kinds of people he meets, not only human beings, but even the devas and the brahmas, he can teach and train them. And so this leads into the next quality, that he is the Satta Deva Manusanang. He's the teacher of deities and human beings. And then the next quality is Buddho, which is the enlightened one. And this seems very similar to Samma Sambuddha. And so when I reflect, what is the difference between them? The way I understand it, and actually if you look at the 9 qualities, we could see the first 4, I think it's 4 or 5. Yeah, the first 4 seem to pertain to the Buddha's achievement of the good for himself, being arahat, perfectly enlightened, accomplished in true knowledge and conduct, fortunate. Okay, then knower of the world, I call this the transitional designation, since it indicates both the Buddha's capacity of knowing things for himself, but also by knowing the minds of living beings. That marks a transition to the next 4, which I see as the Buddha's relation to others. So he's the trainer of persons to be tamed, teacher of devas and humans. So in that case, then Buddho is not just the enlightened one, but the one who enlightens others, the one who is able to bring the liberating knowledge to others. So he's, I sometimes would say, or explain this, Buddho as the enlightened and the enlightener of others. And then the word Bhagava is one who possesses all excellent qualities. And that is what makes him a source of blessings for others. Okay, so these are the 9 epithets, 9 designations or qualities of the Buddha. And these 9 qualities form the basis for the practice of Buddhanusati, recollection of the Buddha. And when one brings to mind the qualities of the Buddha as a deliberative meditation practice, sort of those qualities have a purifying effect on the mind. And so the text goes on to explain how this happens. So it says that when the noble disciple recollects the Tathagata, that's the Buddha, his mind becomes placid or serene. That is, the distractions, the distracting thoughts, the disturbances, the afflictions subside. The mind becomes calm. And in that calmness, out of that calmness, joy arises. And then the defilements of the mind are abandoned. And then the Buddha illustrates this with a simile, and each of the recollections will be illustrated by its own simile. So he says, in the same way that one's head, when dirty, is cleansed by exertion. Okay, so how does one clean a dirty head? By exertion? So here he uses the types of cleaning materials that were used in ancient India. That is cleansing paste, clay, and water. Nowadays we would say shampoo. So one uses shampoo, water, and one has to make the exertion. I don't have experience of shampoo. Not for decades and decades. Okay, what's interesting is that the Buddha illustrates the recollection of the Buddha by cleaning the head. Maybe because the Buddha is at the head of all of the 5 other recollections that will be mentioned. Okay, so then the Buddha says that this is called a noble disciple who observes the Uposatha of Brahma, who dwells together with Brahma, and is by considering Brahma that his mind becomes placid, joy arises, and the defilements of the mind are abandoned. Oh, something got lost there. So it is in this way that the defiled mind is cleansed by exertion. Okay, so here the Buddha uses the expression the Uposatha of Brahma, but we'll see below that he speaks about the other Uposathas as the Uposatha of the Dhamma, the Uposatha of the Sangha. So here the Buddha is using the word Brahma, I think, to represent himself, the Buddha. So Brahma was the creator god venerated by the Brahmins, by the followers of Brahmanism. And so Brahma, the word Brahma, then came on to take on the extended meaning of what is the most excellent, what is the chief, what is the best. Yeah, so the commentary says that it is the perfectly enlightened Buddha who is called Brahma. Okay, so when one observes the Uposatha by practicing recollection of the Buddha, it's as though one were dwelling together with the Buddha. One is becoming sort of intimately familiar with the Buddha and gaining a deeper and deeper appreciation of the greatness of the qualities of the Buddha. And especially when one thinks, I've taken refuge in the Buddha, he is my teacher, my master, my guide, my refuge. And then one considers him in terms of these 9 qualities, then this joy arises. And with that joy, that pure, powerful joy coming from the glorious figure of the Buddha, the defilements of greed, hate, and delusion, and all of their offshoots don't get the opportunity to arise. But one has to say that when the text says, in this way the defilements of the mind are abandoned, it doesn't mean that the defilements are eradicated. This practice just is a way of temporarily overcoming the defilements. But to eradicate the defilements, that takes insight or panya, wisdom. But still, the recollection of the Buddha can bring tranquility, samadhi, that can serve as a basis for panya, for wisdom. Okay, any questions on this so far? Okay, if no questions, then we go on to the next observance. So now, because different people have different preferences, so there are different practices of recollection. So one could undertake several practices on the Uposatha, or one could choose one of these practices, whichever one has the strongest connection with, and make that one's full-time meditation subject for the Uposatha. So the next one in the natural sequence is Dhamm Anusati, which is the recollection of the Dhamma. So here one calls to mind the Dhamma, and this again it uses the standard formula for the qualities of the Dhamma. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Sanditiko Akaliko Ehipasiko Opanayako Pachatang Veditabo Vinyuhi. Okay, so first it speaks about the Dhamma as being swakato. Swakato means well expounded, well taught, well declared. And then in other suttas we find elaborations of this, how the Dhamma is well expounded. So it's said that the Dhamma is Adi Kalyanang, or Adi Kalyano, Madhye Kalyano, Pariyosana Kalyano. So it's good in the beginning, good in the middle, good in the end, and then it's Satang Sabhyanjanang. So this means it's with meaning and with phrasing, with expression. So the two aspects of the Dhamma being well expounded, the meaning of what is taught is good. So it's a clear meaning, pertinent meaning, meaning that relates to the good and welfare of human beings. And it's sabhyanjanang, that it's excellently expressed. So we don't find confusion, lack of logic in the Buddha's teachings, but you can see how the teachings unfold in quite a logical sequence. The Buddha usually, he'll begin with a concise statement introducing the topic, then he'll take each phase of the topic, give a more detailed explanation of it, and then at the end wrap it all up by bringing everything together in the conclusion. Often, to make the meaning clear, he'll bring in similes, and that's always something that's deeply impressed me when reading the suttas, the way so often a very striking simile is used to illustrate the point. In fact, we see this here in this sutta with the way in which he illustrates each recollection by a different way of cleaning some part of the body or some utensil. Okay, so the first is the Dhamma is well expounded by the Buddha. And then it's said to be sanditiko. I realize that I didn't install the diacritical characters. So sanditiko, it comes from, the base of it is ditti, which means, or actually the base would be ditta, which means seen. and then it has a prefix san, which gives the sense of immediacy, and the suffix iko turns it into an adjective. So we translate this as directly visible, clearly visible. So it's something, the Dhamma, the truth of the Dhamma, it's something that can be seen, that one can see for oneself. And then it's akaliko. Yeah, I can get all the right characters off here. Yeah, kaliko, this is based on the word kala, which means time. And so something that needs time to bring its results is kalika. But something that doesn't require time is immediate. That's akalika. So the Dhamma is said to be immediate, not involving time, because when you put it into practice, it brings the benefits immediately. Of course, maybe you think, oh, then I don't have to make a determined, patient effort over a long period of time. I just start to practice, and then immediately I get the full final enlightenment. But that isn't the case. But we could say that's a kaliko in the sense that it brings little benefits immediately. But to get the long-term or the ultimate benefits, one has to be patient, determined, persistent, firmly resolved, and make the effort, make the exertion. But as one goes on practicing, then one could see directly the benefits that come in one's life. So in that sense, the Dhamma is akaliko. Then it's said to be ehipassiko. So this combines two imperatives. One is ehi, which means come, and the other is passa, which means see. And then it's turned into an adjective with iko. So it's literally, the Dhamma is something that says, come and see for yourself. So it's not just a matter of belief, of blind, unquestioning belief. You have to believe this, and then you will gain heaven in your next life. But it says, come, try it out, and see for yourself whether it works or not, whether it's true or not. And so it's something that's, you could say that it's testable. Yeah, this I don't agree with the Burmese reading. Okay, then the next is something of a puzzle, and different translators translate it in different ways. But the verb upaneti it's based on the verb upaneti, which means to bring near, to bring close to oneself. And so from this we get opanayiko, which means literally something that is to be brought close. So the way I understand it, I translated it as applicable. So it's something that is to be applied to oneself. Okay, so it is, I say, applicable, to be applied to oneself. Okay, some translators render opanayiko as leading onward. And so this is another explanation that's given in the Visuddhimagga and the commentaries, that it leads onward to nibbana. But I don't think that is actually the original meaning. Okay, so it's applicable, we'll use that translation, and pachatang veditabo vinyuhi. Okay, so the word pachatang comes from atta, oneself, and pati, which gives a sort of reflexive sense. So for oneself, by oneself, and then veditabo, to be understood, and the ones who are to understand it are the wise ones. So vinyuhi. So it's pachatang veditabo vinyuhi, to be understood by the wise, and each one has to understand it for themselves. Like if I understand, you don't gain the benefit, you have to understand for yourself. Okay, so those are the, what are called the 6 gunas, or 6 qualities of the Dhamma. And so again, the text continues by saying that when the noble disciple thus recollects the Dhamma, his mind again becomes tranquil, joy arises, and the defilements of the mind are abandoned. Now notice the simile is different here. It says, in the same way that one's body, when dirty, is cleansed by exertion. You see, in the case of the Buddha, it's the head is cleaned by exertion. Now for the Dhamma, it's the body. And then this uses the simile or the illustration of using a bathing brush. Of course, this was the cleaning materials that were used in ancient India, lime powder, and then water and effort. Nowadays, you still use a bathing brush or maybe a hand sponge and soap for cleaning the body. Okay, so it's in that way that the defiled mind is cleansed by exertion. And then it concludes, it says that this is called a noble disciple who observes the uposatha of the Dhamma. Notice the difference. The previous one was the uposatha of Brahma, Brahma representing the Buddha. Here it's the uposatha of the Dhamma, dwelling together with the Dhamma. And then it's by considering or by recollecting the Dhamma that the mind becomes tranquil and so forth. Okay, so that's the second recollection. So any questions on this? Okay, then we'll move. Oh, please, Matt. Please take the wireless mic.
Thank you. Bhante, in terms of the triple gems, is the Sangha mentioned in this too as one of the ways?
Is the
Sangha.
Sangha.
The Dhamma, the Uposatha of the Sangha, is that also included?
Yeah, the Sangha will come next.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we're coming to that. Okay, so any other questions? Okay, so now we'll move on to the third recollection. Okay, so this is the recollection of the Sangha, and Sangha is used here, as we'll see, not in the sense of any group or community of fellow practitioners, but in the sense of it's called the Arya Sangha, the Sangha of noble ones. And so here we have first 4 terms, 4 expressions that he used to describe this Sangha. And it's called the Savaka Sangha, the community of the disciples. But as we'll see, these are the noble disciples. Okay, so the 4 terms, all 4 of them have as the stem or the base the word patipano. Patipano can mean both. It's originally a past participle, so it has the sense of has practiced, but also it can take on the sense of something that's continuing, almost like a present participle, so you could say practicing. And so the first one is su, it has the prefix su, which means good, so we could, or well. So we could say that the Sangha of the Buddha's disciples has practiced well or is practicing well. Okay. The second has the prefix, or the first part, uju. Uju means straight, direct, with also the nuance of honest or sincere. So you could say that the Buddha's disciples, community of disciples, is practicing in a straight way, in a direct way, in an honest way. Yeah, here I have practicing the good way, practicing the straight way. Okay, then the third quality is, the word is nyaya. So the word nyaya has the sense of a method, something that is in accordance with, you say, with true principle. So in the translation, I rendered it practicing the true way. So I don't quite like that, but what to do? Maybe you could say practicing the correct way, practicing in accordance with true principle. In the nyaya, we come across this word nyaya in the formula of the Satipatthana Sutta, that the 4 Satipatthanas are said to lead to nyaya, to attaining the nyaya. And so the nyaya is then glosed by the commentaries as the Noble Eightfold Path. So one could say that here that the disciples, the Sangha of disciples, is practicing the way of the Noble Eightfold Path, or in accordance with the Noble Eightfold Path. And then the next designation is Samichi Patipanno. So the word Samichi means what is proper. So there's various kinds of Samichi conduct, right conduct. For example, actually in ordinary life, Samichi has sometimes the nuance of the proper etiquette. For example, when a guest comes to your house, you invite the guest to the seat, you ask if they would like some refreshments, you engage in some polite conversation with them before getting into a deeper discussion. So that's, you say, proper conduct with regard to a visitor, to a guest. Okay, but here it's not referring to conduct in regard to a guest, but I'm just trying to use that example to bring out the nuance of the word samichi. So you could say it's the proper way of practice, the appropriate, or again, correct way of practice. Okay, so those are 4 ways of describing the Buddha's Savaka Sangha, the community or company or order of the disciples. Then inserted into this passage is an explication of what is meant by this community of disciples. So it says the 4 pairs of persons, the 8 types of individuals. So we have Chattari Purisa Yugani, Atta Purisa Pugala. So we've gone over these again and again in the past. So these are, first, they are 4 pairs in that they're people who are on either the path to a particular stage of realization or the one who has reached the corresponding fruition stage. So we have the path and fruit of stream entry, path and fruit of once returner, path and fruit of non-returner, path and fruit of arhatship. So if we take them as pairs, we get 4 pairs. If we take them separately, we get 8 kinds of individuals. Okay, so that is the explication of what is meant by the Savaka Sangha. Then comes another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 descriptive terms. They're said to be ahuneo. This, we could say, it's worthy of oblations. Literally would be oblation. These are actually terms that, at least the first 3, taken from Brahmanism by the Buddha and then used with his own sense. So ahuti is the oblation that the Brahmins would make into the sacred fire, the offering into the fire. So that is ahuti, is to make an offering to the fire. And so this would be, you could say, and then these neo gives the sense of worthy of. So this has the sense of worthy of oblations, worthy of offerings. Then pahuneo, it's originally just an intensification of ahuneo, but it's usually rendered worthy of hospitality. Then the gift that a noble, this would be a king or a prince, would give to the Brahmins who performed the sacrifice was called dakshina, or in Pali, dakina. So that is a gift given to the performers of the sacrifice. And so those who are truly worthy of this gift of would be the noble disciples, the community of noble disciples. So they are said to be Dakineo. And then the next term is Anjali Karaneo. So Anjali is the traditional gesture of respect in Indian culture, or Asian culture in general, joining the palms together in front of the face or raising them to the top of the head. Okay, and then Karaneo is to be done. So those to whom this gesture of reverential salutation is to be done is the noble Sangha. And then finally, the noble Sangha is described as Anuttarang Punya Ketang Lokasa. So it's the unsurpassed, and then here we have a figurative expression, metaphorical expression, Punya Ketang, that is a field of merit, and then Lokasa is for the world. So the idea that underlies this is that when one does certain deeds, wholesome deeds, good deeds, karmic deeds, one is creating merit. Merit is the way I explain it, is wholesome karma considered from the standpoint of its capacity to bring in the future desirable results, desirable benefits. And the metaphor here is that when one does a good deed, a deed that generates merit, it is like planting a seed into a field. And so if one has a good field with fertile soil, in which the field gets sufficient rainwater, then those seeds, and the seeds are strong and healthy seeds, then those seeds will develop and grow into the plants, the kind of crops that one wishes. So if one has the good seeds, good field, then one will get an abundance of crops, a very abundant harvest. And if one has a bad field, even if one does good deeds, one will get some beneficial results, but the results will not be as powerful and as abundant as if one has a good field to plant them in. Okay, so in ancient India and throughout the Buddhist culture, one is looking for the appropriate field in which to sow the seeds of merit that will yield abundant fruits in the future. And this, of course, it can be done with a rather selfish motivation. I want to be rich, I want to be famous, I want to have, to be popular with a lot of friends. But the way I would see this is that these are natural goods that human beings want. And also we have the wish to have good health and a fairly long lifespan. And that is also seen to be the fruits of merit, of meritorious deeds. So of course, if you have the attitude, it doesn't matter whether I'm sick or healthy, doesn't matter whether I live just a short life, a long life, then you can be negligent about doing deeds of merit. But if one wishes for, even though these are worldly benefits, but if one wants to reap them in order to support one's practice, following of the Dhamma, then one should generate these kinds of meritorious deeds. And so then the best field for generating these wholesome seeds of wholesome, for planting these seeds of wholesome deeds is said to be the Savaka Sangha, the Buddha's community of disciples. So it's called the Anuttarang, the unsurpassed field of merit for the world. Okay, so I'm explaining this in detail, but we have to remember that this is being expounded here not just as a set of qualities in themselves, but this is the way one practices the recollection of the Sangha as one of the anusatis, one of the recollective meditation practices. Okay, and so when one recollects the Sangha in this way, so one can go through probably initially all 9 qualities, but then to narrow it down, one could choose even one or a few qualities that resonate with oneself. Then that will enable the mind become tranquil, joy arises, and then the defilements of the mind are abandoned, again, temporarily, not by eradication, in the same way that a dirty cloth is cleaned by exertion. Yeah, here we change the similes from parts of one's own body to things that one uses. Okay, don't be a little shocked by how in ancient India they used to clean dirty cloth. Of course, you need heat, lye, cow dung, water, and effort. Nowadays, we don't really even have to make much effort nowadays. We've become spoiled because of the washing machine. So you put some detergent into the washing machine, throw the clothes into the washing machine, and you still have to press the start button, but that's about it. But if you ever, well, maybe some of you come from traditional Asian cultures where you see the way people, I mean, this is the way I would see it in Sri Lanka. It's so exhausting to clean clothing. People take a bucket of clothes, the dirty clothes, they go to the river, the stream, and did you do this in Sri Lanka? You had a washing machine. Yeah, not at the river. No, the way I see that they would do it in Sri Lanka, they go to the riverside. They go to an area where these broad, flat rocks, and then they take the clothes. They dunk the cloth into the water, bring it out, and they rub the soap over it, and it's a bar of soap. It's not powdered detergent. Then they thoroughly soap it. Then they twist. I could never do this. They twist the cloth into like, I don't know how to describe it, but they twist it, and then they take the cloth and they beat it against the rock. I see even elderly women doing this, and I, as a young monk, couldn't do it. They beat it, so it takes really strength and exertion. And then after beating it against the rock a certain number of times, then they take it out again, then they dump it into the water, drain the soap out of it, then take it, beat it again against the rock in order to get the water out. Then they twist it, sometimes by themselves, sometimes with a companion, until they get all of the water out of the cloth. So it really takes a lot of effort. Okay, so that's the way that the dirty cloth is cleaned by exertion. And so in a similar way, the text continues, the noble disciple recollects the Sangha thus, and then the passage concludes by saying, this is called a noble disciple who observes the uposatha of the Sangha, who dwells together with the Sangha, and then it is by considering the Sangha that the mind becomes placid, joy arises, and the defilements are abandoned. Okay, any questions? Okay, so this is a question from the internet.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, how is it that the commentaries explain opanayako as onward leading? Do I think it is derived from some other word than upaneti? Or do they somehow consider upa as onwards? Yeah, I'd have to look again at the commentaries. I haven't looked at them in a while. But that's just one of the explanations. Certainly it's from the verb upaneti, which has the meaning of leading towards. So it can be leading towards, and that explanation, leading towards nibbana. But upa usually has the sense of bringing to oneself, applying to oneself. So I take upaneti to be bringing to oneself, to be applying to oneself. Okay, any further questions? Okay, is that Daniel?
Hi. Bhante, good morning. I just had a question. Why do you think the first two recollections involve a simile of cleaning the body, whereas the Sangha involves the cloth? Why switch, like the metaphor?
I don't know.
Okay.
You could have had, for the Sangha, could have had the legs. So the Dhamma could have been the trunk, Sangha could have been the legs. Okay, shall we continue then? Okay, so now we come to the next recollection. So the first three are the recollection of the three jewels. And now we come to certain qualities that would be possessed by the disciple himself or herself, or that should be possessed. And this is referring now to a noble disciple. So now it's probably indicating a disciple who has reached at least the level of a stream enterer. Though of course, somebody else should be, somebody who's not a true noble one, should still be recollecting these qualities as a way of inspiring the mind to pursue them. Okay, so this is one recollects one's own, here I translated virtuous behavior. The word in the text is the silani as a plural. Okay, so the key word here is silani, which is the, you say, the different types of virtuous behavior. And so this would be, in the case of the noble disciple, behavior that is in conformity with the 5 precepts. So these precepts are recollected as being unbroken, not breaking the precepts, as being flawless, unblemished, unblotched, freeing as being liberated, as praised by the wise. Then this is important expression, ungrasped, not clinging to those precepts. Probably with the wrong view of that sila bhatta paramasa, the view of just observing the precepts themselves is sufficient. And then the purpose of the precepts is indicated by the last expression, samadhi sangvattani kani, leading to samadhi, to concentration. And so then when the noble disciple recollects their own observance of the precepts, then again the mind becomes placid, joy arises, and so on. And then it's illustrated by the example of, in the same way that a dirty mirror is cleaned by exertion. And then it explains how one cleans a dirty mirror. And then the simile is applied. And then it said, this is called a noble disciple who observes the uposatha of sila, of virtuous behavior, who dwells together with virtuous behavior. And then by considering virtuous behavior, the mind becomes calm, joy arises, and the defilements are abandoned. Okay, this is interesting. There's one of the 6 recollections is for some reason omitted in the sutta. I don't know why, but the one that's omitted is the recollection of generosity. This is in Pali, chaga nusati. And instead, what is included is the 6th recollection, which is the recollection of the deities. But what's interesting is the way the Buddha has sort of turned around the way of thinking of the deities that would have been practiced by, say, within mainstream Brahmanism or by the more local indigenous religious sects that were flourishing in India. In those traditions, one would recollect the deities and develop devotion towards the deities. And so the Buddha seems to have included this practice as a way of taking this traditional practice and turning it almost upside down to make it conformable to his own teaching. So here he says that the noble disciple recollects the deities thus. Then we come to the 6 groups of sense sphere deities. These are the 6 levels of sense sphere deities. Yeah, the deities of the 4 great kings, the Chatu Maharajika, the Tavatingsa Devas, Yama Devas, Tusita Devas. The Devas who delight in creation, and the Devas who control what is created by others. Then we come to the Devas of the Brahma world, the Devas of Brahma's company, and then the Devas still higher than these. So one is thinking of the Devas, but not for the purpose of generating devotion towards those deities, but rather one calls to mind the qualities that have led those deities to rebirth in those particular realms of the Deva world. And then one recollects that one possesses those same qualities oneself. And so here one thinks, I too have such faith as those deities possessed, because of which they were reborn there. I too have such sila, such sutta, such learning, such chaga, such generosity, and such panya, such wisdom. And so what one is actually doing here is calling to mind not so much the deities themselves, but the qualities that one has within oneself that lead to rebirth in the Deva world. And so the emphasis here almost changes from that of the deities themselves to one's own possession of faith, good behavior, learning, generosity, and wisdom. Okay, and then just to wrap up, this is compared in the simile to abandoning the defilements of the mind in the same way that impure gold is cleaned by exertion. Okay, so we already did the sila aspect. And so the concluding part of the sutta you should read for yourselves. We don't have time to take it here. But it goes through the benefits that come from observing the uposatha in this way, that it can lead to rebirth into any of these deva worlds and so forth. Okay, we'll have to wrap up the class here with the sharing of the merits. And before we do the sharing of the merits, I should mention that tomorrow we have here the celebration of Vesak. That will be at 10 o'clock in the morning. We have the ceremony of bathing the newborn Buddha. And then in the afternoon, there'll be a cultural show. And so everybody who comes will have the opportunity to pour perfume-scented water over the newborn Buddha, which is supposed to be a great punya kamma, a great deed of merit. Okay, so let us share the merits now with the devas, the Dhamma-protecting devas, the nagas, the bhutas or fair spirits. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu sasanang. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanang. Akasata chabumata Deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mang parang. Etavatacham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Etavatacham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu Sabba sampati siddhya. Etavatacham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe sata anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Bhavagopadaya avici hetato etantare satakayupapanna rupya rupicha asanya sanino dukkha pamuchantu pusantu Nibuting. Okay, we could stand. And then we end with 3 half bows to the Buddha.